Oshamir, hot background alien Jedi, bleeding lightsaber crystals, and peeping Sith Lords, the Acolyte Episode 8, The Acolyte, had it all and then some. Was it perfect? No. But did I enjoy it? Yes. So buckle up, besties, because we're going back to Brendok where it all began, and it's going to be a bumpy ride. Before I get into my thoughts, welcome back to my channel. My name is Scotty Holiday. I'm a queer Star Wars creator. Please consider liking, subscribing, and following me on social media for all my latest Star Wars content. As I mentioned in my episode 7 review, The Acolyte as a series showed us the flaws of the Jedi that will eventually lead to their downfall by the time of Revenge of the Sith. But episode 8 really focused on the flaws of two specific Jedi, and the first I want to talk about is Master Sol. Up until his dying breath, Sol believed he did what was best for Osha, a mindset he carried with him from their first encounter 16 years prior. While I understand Sol's intentions of trying to save May and Osha, did they really need saving to begin with? This is Sol's biggest flaw. In trying to do what he believed was best for Osha, it actually led to her own undoing. Sol unknowingly took Osha's choice away from her, and in a sense, sealed her dark destiny. Osha says that she never became a Jedi because she could never learn to calm her negative emotions she harbors because of Sol's actions. Now in the end, I do believe that Sol had Osha's best intentions at heart, and that his actions were noble, albeit flawed, and Mother Anastasia tells him this in episode 7. His noble actions are the very thing that destroys him in the end. It was honestly such a heartbreaking end for Sol because his actions throughout the series proved that he really did love Osha, and the last thing he wanted to do was hurt her. He tells her in his final words, "I kept this from you so you could have the life you'd always dreamed of. I did everything because I love you." Going into the finale, I theorized that Osha would end up killing Sol as her final act towards embracing the dark side, but even that didn't prepare me to watch it all go down. I don't think Osha's darkness was actually unlocked until she put on Qimir's helmet. From the brief glimpse at the beginning of the episode, and then later on Brendok when we see her dark emotions take a hold of her, first embracing her anger and hatred to attack May, and then embracing her grief upon learning the truth of her mother's death at the hands of Sol. Osha unintentionally bleeding Sol's lightsaber crystal upon finally learning the truth of her past also proved to be the physical and visual manifestation of her emotions taking over her actions. I never imagined that Osha's first feat after reconnecting with the Force would be using it to kill her former master, but these final moments on Brendok really proved to be the perfect storm for her fall, all because Sol chose to hide her from the truth for so long. Throughout episodes 6 and 8, Osha tells Qimir that she's not like her sister, and the finale proved this as we saw Osha do what May couldn't. She killed a Jedi without a weapon. Osha even saw her own fate while wearing Qimir's helmet, though neither of them realized it at the time. Being back at the place where it all began is clearly affecting Sol, but unlike Osha, he's able to control his emotions and not let them get the best of him due to his mastery of the Force, which becomes all the more clear during his final duel with Qimir and as he accepts his fate, telling Osha it's okay in his final moments. Speaking of Qimir, let's talk about his presence and purpose within the finale. After episode 6, the unmasking of Qimir, not only physically but from a storytelling standpoint, kind of ruined the initial intrigue I had for him as a character, as well as his ferocity as an antagonist. The final scenes of Osha taking May's place as his acolyte came off as something I should be happy about and rooting for, when really it should have been a tragic moment. I think there's definitely a way to dive into the antagonists of the story, making them compelling and complex or even sympathetic characters without over-humanizing them. Sure, we get the tease of Plagueis watching over Qimir and Osha before they leave for Brendok, but we don't even know what the relationship between Plagueis and Qimir is. For example, learning that Qimir's actions throughout the series and drive to find an acolyte of his own were driven by his fear of Plagueis or Tenebrous would have hit so much harder and really raised the stakes for his character. This would have also added so much more tragedy to Osha's decision in the end, since it would also put a target on her back as well. Though I'm very interested to see where the story goes from here, because love in Star Wars almost always ends up in tragedy. In reference to the Sith and their presence in the series, we also have to talk about that Darth Plagueis tease as well. The way I started screaming when we saw that creepy gray hand reach out of the cave, and my screaming only intensified when we got the face reveal. The Sith are literally working in the shadows. Though this does beg the question, what is Plagueis' relationship to Qimir? Initially, I theorized that Qimir was the apprentice to Darth Tenebrous at one point, but was cast aside based off his conversation with Osha in episode 6. I can't see Tenebrous allowing his former apprentice to live, especially with how secretive the Sith are operating at this point in the timeline, and he surely would have sent Plagueis to kill Qimir, or even kill Qimir himself, over having a rogue darkside user out in the galaxy. On the opposite end, there's also the possibility that Qimir could actually be Plagueis' acolyte or even apprentice. And based off Soul's confirmation that Mother Anisea used the Force to create life, I believe Osha and May's very existence will be the catalyst for Darth Plagueis' obsession with learning how to use the Force to create life and his own quest for immortality. But let me know what you think about this revelation in the comments below. Turning our focus back to the Jedi, I also want to talk about Master Vernestra because this episode was the first to really give us insight into her true motivations in the series. But better late than never, right? At the beginning of the episode, she meets with the face of the Jedi Order's political enemies, Senator Rayancourt, who is not only leading the campaign for an external review of the Jedi Order, but is also aware of the Jedi murders and reported the Order's lack of transparency to the Chancellor as well. Now, as much as I love the politics of it all, I have to wonder, why wasn't Senator Rayancourt introduced prior to the final episode of the season? If anything, this sets up the opportunity for Season 2 to delve into the political conflict between the Jedi and the Senate, on top of the Jedi and the Sith, something I would personally love to see. Rayancourt tells Vernestra, "You project an image of goodness and restraint, but it's only a matter of time before one of you snaps. And when, not if that happens, who will be strong enough to stop him?" Which clearly foreshadows so many of the Jedi's downfalls, along with the penultimate downfall of Anakin Skywalker. From here, Vernestra gathers a group of Jedi Knights and heads to Brendok to confront Soul, but little does she know, her old student is not only alive but on the planet as well, thus confirming Qimir's relation to the Jedi Order, Vernestra, and the scars on his back that she definitely gave him in their last confrontation. Though they never get a chance to confront one another, something I really wanted to see before the end of the season, though this does keep Qimir and subsequently the Sith's return a secret from the wider Jedi Order, so I guess it makes sense. Once the Jedi make their way inside the fortress, Vernestra is able to feel the events of the past through the Force and piece together the truth of what happened 16 years ago between the Jedi and the Witch Coven. From here, the Knights go off to find May with the help of Basil, and later on we see Vernestra give Master Soul a proper Jedi burial, similar to Qui-Gon in The Phantom Menace, or Vader in Return of the Jedi. The Jedi do eventually find May and take her back to Coruscant, but only after she's agreed to have her mind wiped by Qimir in order to keep he and Osha's involvement a secret. Vernestra tries to question her, attempting to learn more about the event that took place leading up to Soul's death, but the only memories she's held on to are from the Night of the Fire back when she was only 8 years old. Vernestra tells May about her sister and plans for the two of them to track down not only Osha, but Qimir as well, mirroring Soul reuniting with Osha to track down May at the beginning of the series, or even the story of Revan in Knights of the Old Republic, which I really enjoyed. But afterwards, we finally see Vernestra come clean to the Senate about the Jedi murder investigation, or so we thought. Instead of finally telling the truth, Vernestra uses Soul as a scapegoat to only further cover up the tragedies we saw play out throughout the series, and I have to wonder, did she do this because all the proof of the truth of the mission was lost between Soul's death and May's mind wipe? Or was it to protect herself and or the Jedi Order? Which then also makes me wonder whether or not she told Yoda the truth in the end as well. On a positive note though, I have to praise the Acolyte for its action sequences, stunt choreography, and fight scenes throughout, including the finale. This is the best action we've seen from Star Wars on the small screen, and it's really raised the bar for everything that comes out afterwards. Episode 8's beginning chase sequence through the asteroid ring was super exciting both visually and from an action standpoint, and I'm actually kind of bummed we didn't get to see more space combat in the series now. The duel between Soul and Qimir in this episode was fun with some standout moments, specifically Soul's Force Repulse, which I loved seeing as a huge fan of the Star Wars video games. Definitely a step up from episode 7, though still not reaching the height of episode 5. I also loved May and Osha's fight, with Osha fully giving into her emotions and going feral against her sister. Seeing the twins evenly matched, mirroring one another's moves was a great touch, on top of the symbolism of Osha now donning all grey and May in all white. A true flip from where they began at the beginning of the series. Speaking of, the costuming, character design, and sets of the series also set a new precedent for how good Star Wars can look outside of the films as well, and I hope the Acolyte, along with Andor, have convinced the other Star Wars series to give the volume a break and embrace real physical sets going forward more often than not. In general, I did enjoy the episode, but it still left me with more to be desired. I don't think this is a flaw of the directing, writing, acting, or the story itself, but once again, the flaw of not having enough time to tell the story the series is trying to tell. I already anticipate Skeleton Crew to have the same 8 30-minute episode series format, but I hope Disney realizes that this is just not enough. It's honestly been such a detriment, not only with The Acolyte, but basically everything to come out after The Mandalorian Season 2. So in the end, Osha has swapped places with May, embracing the dark side and joining Qimir as his acolyte, and the flaws of the Jedi along with their cover-up continues. Like the Ahsoka Season 1 finale, the Acolyte Finale solved the series' initial questions, but in doing so, introduced a lot of new questions that we're not even guaranteed to get an answer to. Although leslye Headland described the story of the season as self-contained, I think there is so much potential for a second season, and I really hope that we do get one. As much as I would love to see the Acolyte get renewed for a second season, the unfair amount of discourse surrounding the series is definitely going to be a point of contention for its future. And I really hate that, to be honest. But what did you think of the Acolyte Finale? Do you want to see a season 2? Let me know in the comments, or join my Discord to continue the conversation there. Make sure to like, subscribe, and consider following me on social media at Scotty Holiday SW for all my latest Star Wars content. Thank you all so much for watching, and as always, may the Force be with you.